Okay, so in this case study, we're going to go through an example of a client that I worked with. I'll touch on some of the issues he was dealing with, go through the whole process, what he was doing before we got started, and then what we focused on when we were working together. So when he came into it, just in terms of symptoms he was dealing with, he had constipation, diarrhea, a lot of bloating, stomach pain, white coating on his tongue, which is typically very indicative of overgrowth, both more often than not fungal overgrowth, but it could also be indication of bacterial overgrowth. And when you think about, you have these things like in your mouth, what starts in your mouth can often make its way down into the digestive tract. Um, the others were food sensitivities, low energy, sex drive was just completely gone, which again, with some of these microbiome issues that I'll touch on in a second, a lot of times, especially if that's paired with intestinal permeability or leaky gut, affects hormone levels. So testosterone levels just drop off, sex drive is completely gone. And then just constant discomfort, bloating, the gas, all of these things he was dealing with just left him in this constantly uncomfortable state. It was affecting his work. Obviously, the energy levels of motivation, the moods, all of that stuff pretty obviously can have a significant effect on just work. Social life, not being able to go out, complete loss of sex drive or irritability, can't go out and eat with his friends. Confidence levels are gone as well. So the hormonal imbalances, all of these things were kind of affecting every single aspect of his life before we got started. He had worked with other professionals, supposed experts. He worked with gastroenterologists, specializing in digestive health, naturopaths, dietitians, coaches. So needless to say, he was a little bit hesitant and skeptical when we had first spoke. He went to multiple people, spent thousands of dollars with these experts telling him that they could help him, and they weren't. Um, he the recommendations, the things that they were focusing on, most of them were just really focusing on the symptoms. So like, here's some supplements that can help you with your symptoms. Some of them, naturopaths, obviously are a little bit more functional, holistic focused. So talking about things like diet, herbal supplements. But there's a lot of medications from the doctors. They were recommending procedures, just some crazy stuff being recommended for issues that can be addressed very naturally. Starting point. So when we first met, you could just tell in his voice, absolutely exhausted, tried many things, and just really starting to lose hope. Obviously frustrated over wasting all of this time and all of this money to address these issues and making no progress. I'm sure you can imagine. And basically just hopeless. Like I said, he was a little bit skeptical and hesitant at first, which is completely understandable. And you could just sense all of this kind of in his voice, which is something a lot of the people I work with are feeling that exact same way. It's just frustrating. You're putting in the effort, you're trying your best, you're investing money, you're working with people who are highly recommended and telling you that they can help you fix your issues, and it's still not working. You just start to wonder, like, is my situation actually different? Is this even solvable? So that's kind of where he was starting from. In terms of our focus, so his previous practitioners, there was a lot going on there in terms of like issues. Most of them weren't looking at any testing and just giving him recommendations entirely based on his symptoms. So like, you have bloating, oh, you should try PPIs. You like, just very basic surface level recommendations. The ones who were running testing, sorry about that. The ones who were running testing weren't really interpreting them properly. So there were several issues just taking a look at his testing that I could immediately look at and point out. Some of his doctors were just completely misreading these. A lot of the doctors and even naturopaths looking at testing, is it in reference range? Yep, it's in reference range. Okay, you're good to go, which is just a crazy way to approach this. That is not, these reference ranges are based off of massive populations of people. Their averages, when you think about the average person, they're not very healthy. So basing your health and where your health stands when you're comparing it to a population of people who is not healthy, not the best way to approach things. So that's really all a lot of these people are looking at. And it's just like, if you're basing your entire protocols and your assumptions based on incomplete information or misinterpreting data, it's pretty easy to understand why, you're not going to be making some progress there. So obviously these things weren't working, and which was good news. And when I see this, when I'm working with clients, it's frustrating obviously for him, but from my perspective, it's a great thing to see because that tells us, we know exactly what's going on here. We know exactly what we need to do instead of just kind of guessing, making false assumptions, and approaching things the wrong way. So his test results, having those test results saved a lot of time. Most people do not have that up front. When you already have that information, you can kind of, what's going on, you can get started right away. Obviously, if you don't, there's kind of a waiting period there. But so we were able to identify these issues. He had dysbiosis, he had pathogen overgrowth, he had inflammation. A lot of times when you're dealing with these things here, it often leads to this. It weakens the gut lining. And the dysbiosis, the imbalances, the overgrowth, the inflammation that comes with that, and then the leaky gut, now you got toxins and harmful substances getting into your bloodstream. The microbiome affects hormonal balance. It affects neurotransmitters. So a lot of times you'll see hormonal imbalances and neurotransmitter imbalances along with those other issues. So those are kind of the main things. There were some others as well from his blood work, but these are kind of the main issues that we were focusing on. And based on his symptoms, this stuff all made sense. What we focused on, so the first thing here was like just the foundation. So I talk about this in the course, talk about this with everybody. If you identify these issues, that's great. But if the foundation to your health is not where it needs to be, you're not going to make much progress. You could throw all of the supplements, all the medication you can do. You could have a great, protocol that you're going through. But if the structure of your diet is not where it should be, if your sleep and your stress and all of these other factors are not where they need to be, that stuff's not going to be supporting you. It's actually just going to be getting in the way of making progress. So that's the first thing you should always be focusing on. For him, elimination diet was needed. He had food sensitivities. There were certain foods that were contributing to his flare-ups, causing irritation, causing inflammation. So what we focused on is just eliminating these things, getting to a very basic diet, and then adding things back one by one. So that helped us identify what were some of those foods causing the issues, keep the things that are causing issues out, and really just have kind of a basic diet, making sure he's getting the nutrients he needs, but we're not incorporating foods that are going to be problematic for him. Structural changes as well. So like calories and meal sizing. He wasn't getting enough calories. He wasn't getting enough energy and nutrients to get throughout the day. And the sizing of his meals was pretty out of whack. I think when he was first coming in, he was either doing like one meal a day or 2 meals a day, which, for some people, 2 meals a day might be okay. But when you're dealing with digestive issues, and you sit down to eat a meal and you're trying to force your body to process like 1,000+ calories in one sitting, that's probably going to be problematic. If you're perfectly healthy and you're not dealing with digestive issues, that might be okay. But in these situations, for most people, that's not going to be the best approach. So we were focusing on breaking that up a little bit, get 3 meals a day and adding in some snacks in between there to make sure he's getting the nutrients that he needed. The macronutrients was also important. So with the overgrowth, carbs, sugar, starches, kind of feeding pathogens, depending on what types of pathogens you're dealing with, that can be more important with certain types than others, but we need to make some adjustments there. Protein, also diversity. So the micronutrients you're getting from animal protein are super important. If you're just eating the exact same protein sources all the time, you're not going to be getting what you need. And his fats were pretty excessively high. So when you're dealing with these issues, fat digestion is really important for a number of different reasons. The fat soluble vitamins, the things you get from that. But fats are more dense, they're harder to digest. So a lot of people, when they're thinking about their diet, they're looking at it purely from a per gram perspective. So if you're getting, 5 grams of fats, the amount of calories that you're getting from that is going to be significantly more than 5 grams of carbohydrates or 5 grams of protein. His fats were really, really high. He wasn't digesting his fats well. His testing was showing fecal fats, which is an indication that those aren't being broken down the way they should be. That's going to be contributing to some of that inflammation, and it was for him. The other reason this is important is bile production. Bile is heavily involved in this detoxification process. It's one of the basically like the vehicles that some of these toxins and things are being transported through the body and pulled out of the body. So if you're doing excessive amounts of fat, you're also dealing with digestive issues, fat digestion issues, whether that's from liver issues or bile duct obstruction, bile flow issues. That's probably going to be leading some problems for you. So that's something we needed to focus on. Micronutrients, there was a few that he was pretty deficient in. All of these are going to be playing an important role. Magnesium is a regulatory nutrient in terms of your microbiome. Zinc when it comes to gut lining. Copper, immune system function. All of these are important in general, not just for digestive health, but specifically play a pretty important role in digestive health. So those are some of the ones that we needed to focus on there. The lifestyle side of things, his light environment was not great. this is, which I talked throughout the course as well, both from vitamin D generation perspective, but also your circadian rhythms, getting a lot of artificial light exposure, especially at nighttime. Stress levels were pretty excessive. This was a major, major factor for him, contributing to a lot of his issues. Meditation, deep breathing, journaling, exercise. It's going to be different for everybody what works best, but in this situation, these are the ones that were helping the most. And also regularity in his daily routine. So when you think about circadian rhythms, light plays an important role there, but so does the timing of your meals. So does the timing of when you're sleeping and when you're waking. The digestive enzymes, stomach acid secretion, a lot of these different things are the cues for these. Like when you sit down to eat, your body kind of syncs up on that schedule. So if every day you eat at 12 o'clock and then all of a sudden you start eating 2 hours earlier, those things are not going to be synced up very well. Same thing with your sleep schedule. Circadian rhythms are affected by that. So that was something we needed to focus on and really regulate things on that front. Got the foundation down. These things were all in a really good position, which we spent several weeks focusing on, and then kind of went into the prep for the detox and the issues from his testing. So detox pathways, bowel movement regularity. A lot of people that are dealing with these issues have either constipation or diarrhea. Neither of those is great. But the constipation, things kind of slow down. You get the stagnation. It allows the overgrowth to worsen or creates environments where bacteria can flourish. So focusing on regulating that. Vitamin B1, like I said before, was one that he wasn't getting enough of. So really focusing on getting more of that. Herbal teas can be very helpful here. Senna, fennel tea, triphala, these are all really, really helpful. Magnesium glycinate. So glycinate, citrate, both of these can be helpful just because of the importance that magnesium plays in digestive health in general. For some people, most people actually, citrate is going to be a better option if you're dealing with some stagnation there, but glycinate can also be helpful. We were using magnesium glycinate, also just focusing on movement. So when your body is moving, you're stimulating muscles, digestive tract, organs and muscles that are involved in this process. So that is helpful when it comes to motility. Hydration was really important. Your kidneys, like these toxins and things you're exposed to get pulled out of your body through different areas. So something that's in the digestive tract can be absorbed, it makes its way to the liver, it can go out through the kidneys, it can go out through the digestive tract. So this is a really good example of why looking at things holistically is really important. Looking at some of his test results, you can see indications of some stress on his liver and his kidneys. Focusing on proper hydration. Proper hydration was really important, which is not just fluids, it's also electrolytes as well. I think a lot of people just only focus on how much water they drink throughout the day. They don't also focus on the electrolytes. Exercise, sauna, sweating in general, just helping kind of get some of this stuff out. Again, on the detox pathway side of things. Liver function, like I said before, some things from his test results were indicative of needing some support there. Important nutrients that play an important role here. So microbiome regulators, I touched on magnesium before. Vitamin K would be another one. On the immune system side of things, I think a lot of people, for whatever reason, you could be exposed to something that's suppressing your immune system. That's obviously one of the main ways your body is fighting off pathogens and preventing some of these harmful substances from causing damage in the body. So really providing support to the immune system, especially if you are already dealing with these and you have high levels of inflammation. Before getting into that detox, so when you have leaky gut, harmful substances can leak from the gut into the bloodstream. If you just start off with a detox, you're breaking up biofilm, you have endotoxins and all this stuff being released into your body, it's probably going to be causing some major, major issues. Autoimmune disease, there's all cancer, there's all kinds of serious problems that are linked to leaky gut for this exact reason. So before kind of going through that detox, that was super, super important to be focusing on that, providing things that help strengthen the gut lining. So some of the things we were focusing on there, butyrate, zinc, vitamin D, bone broth, colostrum. Stress, as I said before, was a major factor for him, which is something that can directly weaken the gut lining. So that was also something we were continuing to focus on there. With detox, so we use things to break up biofilm. Quorum sensing is something that's really important to consider here. Forming biofilms, antibiotic gene resistance. There's a lot of different things that make it harder to kill these off. So using things that can break that up, like NAC, cinnamon, ginger, very, very helpful. With the binders, we were using things that could help with the issues that we know from his testing, as well as just based on his diet, where he lives, some of the toxins that he could be exposed to. So we're using a complex of binders there that are helpful, binding to heavy metals, binding to toxins, binding to biofilms, make sure that stuff's getting pulled out of the body. In terms of pathogens, we used oregano, berberine, allicin, and neem to directly kind of kill some of those off once we had focused on the biofilm and breaking that up. After we got through the detox, rebalancing is really important. This is a part that a lot of people leave out. If you just use antibiotics or even herbal antibiotics and you clear that stuff out, but you don't get your microbiome back in balance, you don't boost those probiotic levels again, those are what help keep your microbiome functioning properly. They play a regulatory role in your microbiome, support your immune system, manage inflammation levels. This is really, really important. So that's something we were focusing on. The resealing of the gut lining, we were doing that before, but as long as that overgrowth is there, as long as the inflammation is there, there's only so much progress you can make with that. Those things can still be contributing to it. So it's still important to be focusing on that at the end. In terms of the probiotics and rebalancing, we were focusing on fermented foods and prebiotics. We were not using probiotic supplements. There are situations where I think those can be helpful. For a majority of cases, I don't think that that's the best approach. You can get more diversity through fermented foods, which is exactly what we did. Things like sauerkraut, kefir, yogurt. There are studies showing that the dairy products are potentially a better option because of the fat that's in that dairy. It's a better transporter, getting those actual probiotics into your microbiome. With things like sauerkraut, the food matrix, which is basically like the physical structure of the food, does help with that transport as well, but the dairy tends to be a little bit superior compared to those. So we're using a mix of a few of those different things there. The immunity, the inflammation, again, really important for the same reasons as the gut lining. If you have some of the things that are contributing to the inflammation, you can focus on those things up front. You can make some progress with them. But at this point, it's still important to focus on it. Now we've cleared out the things that are contributing to it. So now we can really, really make some progress. Stress, light environment, also important beyond just the effect that stress has on gut lining. Immunity, inflammation levels can be going higher as a result of excessive stress levels. So that's the entire process we went through. By the end of it, I'll put a clip of his kind of feedback at the end here. By the end of this process, he was a completely different person. Like I said at the beginning, you could feel it in his voice. You could feel the frustration, the exhaustion. Like he was just in a really, really bad situation. By the end of this, he was back in the gym exercising. Sex drive was back, like actually feeling like himself again. In terms of things that I think were really important, the reason he got these results, this was all based on his test results. If you remember what I was saying before with these doctors, most of it was just based on symptoms. Some of them weren't even looking into testing at all. The ones that were looking into the testing were misinterpreting the testing. The recommendations they were giving based on the test results weren't so great. So that was super important. Using the combination of the things that we did use, biofilm disruptors, antipathogenics, supporting his liver, the specific dosages, all of that was based on the test results, which is really important. You can identify that you have symptoms of overgrowth, and then you can, go to Twitter and read some threads like, this is a good antimicrobial, this is a good antimicrobial. Those are all more sensitive, like the type of bacteria or fungal overgrowth or parasite. Some are more sensitive to certain substances than others. So having that data is really important because you can base it all off of that. Like if black seed oil is antimicrobial, but the specific type of overgrowth you have is not as sensitive to it, maybe it helps, maybe it doesn't. If there's something else it's more sensitive to, that's obviously going to be the better approach. So basing everything off of your test results is really, really important. We were not just guessing based on his symptoms like the other practitioners had done. Really important thing that I always want to mention here is there's turbulence along the way. Like there was, I'd say probably 75% of the way through this process, he wasn't feeling better. Like he was not in a situation where he was just like good to go, everything's great, which is hard because like you're investing your time, you're investing your money into addressing these issues, and you've made it like 3/4 of the way through, and you're not where you want to be, and you're honestly just not even seeing a ton of improvement. So a lot of people give up. He did not even once. He was fully bought in the entire time, which was a major, major part of why he got these results. He stayed consistent. He did every single thing the way that we talked about, and that's why he was able to get these issues resolved. The consistency is a part of that too. So some people will be consistent during the week, and then they get to the weekends and they kind of let up a little bit, or they get 3/4 of the way through and they realize like these issues are still here and I haven't made a ton of progress. They start to back off a little bit. Didn't happen at all. Stayed consistent the entire way through, and I think that's also why he was able to get these resolved. as quickly as he did. There was definitely a lot going on here, but this was like a little over a 4 month process, start to finish. And by the time he got to the end of it, he was feeling like a totally different person.
My name's Alex. I'm 23 years old and I'm from Melbourne, Australia. I've just completed one-on-one coaching with Nick. Before working with Nick, I had some pretty severe gut issues. Some of the symptoms included diarrhea, gas, bloating, constipation, significantly low testosterone levels, poor sleep, weight loss. My stress and anxiety was through the roof. Since working with Nick, I've introduced 15 new foods. I'm back in the gym. I'm lifting weight. I'm running again. I'm full of energy. My sex drive is back. I've put on 2.5 kilos. My stress and anxiety isn't as high as what it used to be. My sleep is better. If there's one regret I have, it's not working with him sooner, because he has seriously changed my life.
It's really just about identifying the issues, figuring out what needs to be done to address those issues, figuring out the best tools to use to address those issues, and then just executing on it. And I think some people get part of that. They get the first part of it. They don't execute on it, or they don't figure out the best way to address it, or they don't even go through the testing. They don't identify the issues, and they're just kind of throwing things at it, hoping that it works. Without having all of these things that we focus on and without doing it in the exact order we did, I don't think he would have got those results.